Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Raw Law Unfiltered with your host, the DUI Guy Plus. Boy, oh boy, what show do we have for you today? Please help me in joining to the studio, fair and balanced.
What's going on, Larry? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. When did it change to Raw Law, or has it always been that?
Well, as far as our viewers are concerned, it has always been like that.
Oh,
But
okay. So then I just
no,
didn't know.
no, I'm totally kidding. We when I don't remember, it was sometime like after the trial that I realized, the DUI guy plus is more of a personality than like a channel because people are going to think like,
hmm
well, I'm coming here for DUI content. I'm not interested in DUI content. What else you got?
hmm
And if that's all you have, then I'm not interested. So I was like, well, I need a title. I need like an idea. And somebody at the I remember I think I got the idea from somebody when I was at the trial because I was getting loads of emails and loads of
Right.
messages on like every platform imaginable. And one of them I'll never forget was like, man, you should do something with like raw law because that's kind of like what you are and what you do. And I'm like, I'll remember that.
Yeah, I like it. No, as soon as you said it, I was like, I like that. That's good. And I'm all about like, what in the news you have to name stuff. A lot of people don't know that I actually, and I have it, I have proof on my channel that I actually named Law and Lumber's channel. um
Really?
because yes, and the proof is actually on my channel. I have that time that I named a YouTube channel. And it's just when you have these like enterprising, um what do they call them in the news? I'm trying to remember. um like basically like these pieces, like for example, like anchors will do something once a week, like your medical minute or something like that. So a lot of times what we do is you look up like, okay, like they were doing a whole contest to name his channel. And I was like, okay. And I just happened to be watching Legal Bites that day during the trial. This was at the very like beginning. Like I think Rob had been on for maybe 3 days.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, what's another word for like wood? Because he likes wood, he's a woodworker. And I saw lumber and I was like,
Freaking
oh my
love.
God. I was like, lawn lumber, that's perfect. And so I threw it in there, and then you can see it pops up and Rob's face goes, huh. And then you see he changes his name to Lawn Lumber, and the rest is history. But yeah.
It checks out because his channel was created like April 19th or something this
Yeah,
year,
something like that. Yeah.
April
hmm
25th. It was right when he came out with that video about her. Well, no, he created his channel like a couple weeks prior. I remember this because his first video that he ever posted, which I can't, trying to get into Rob's head, which probably not a place a lot of us may want to be, which is fair. But his first video that he publishes in like first second week of May after she testifies about the bed goes fucking viral and gets like 1.7 million hits in like
Yeah.
a week or something crazy. And I'm
He
sure he
had
was
no
probably
idea
sitting
what
there
was
going
coming.
like, dude, this shit's easy. Whoever said like YouTube is difficult? Like this is so easy.
I know.
I have like 40,000 subscribers in a day. I have a million views in a day. Like you guys suck. Like I can
Yeah.
only imagine what he was thinking.
Oh yeah, and like there were multiple times like after I'd gone on his channel a bunch, where he was talking and he was just like, he kept saying, he's like, Farron, he's like, I know this isn't easy. He's like, but it came so easily. He's like, but
Yeah.
I know this isn't easy. He's like, I know people have been at this for years. And I was like, yeah, you're looking at one of them. I was like, but I mean, I never
Two
wanted
of
to
them.
be, yeah, exactly. I mean, I never wanted to be, like a YouTuber or anything. It was just, I would throw my reports online and stuff like that. And I always say like, it was just one of these things like, after my news network had shut down and I was watching the Depp trial, and I happened to go between, Legal Bites, Ricada, you, and then Good Logic. I kind of like took a liking to Joe because I was like, oh, okay, he's kind of like witty, he's funny. But then he kind of would explain it, and it was just him. And I was like, okay, I kind of like this, just him. Like, kind of like how Emily D. Baker was too. Another one that I watched. And then I happened to super chat him one day and was like, hey, um, Warner Brothers could just call it an emergency meeting because I have a friend out in Hollywood, and he DM'd me on Twitter and was like, "Hey, you want to come on?" And I was like on your show? And he was like, "Yeah, why not?" He's like, "I saw you're a news anchor," and I was like, "Give me 30 minutes," and went on, and the rest is history. Rest is history.
Let me take this moment to plug your channel. Everybody go right now and subscribe to Fair and Balanced. It's Fair and Balanced on YouTube, right?
Yep. Fair and Balanced.
That right there where my finger is pointing. Fair and Balanced. Fair and Balanced on YouTube.
Oh yeah. I can't remember the opposite thing. It's so weird. Yeah.
It is terrible. Yeah. It takes practice and I still suck at it. I just have to remember to point in the opposite direction of where I want to go.
But I have to tell everybody about our love story and how we met.
Oh, please.
I will never forget this. So we're at the trial, and I had seen you on the channels before, but then I saw you. You were I think you were the very first person to actually go to the trial and come out and talk about what the jury, down to what they were wearing. Which is, I've covered court cases as a reporter in my young reporter days. And that was one of the things that we looked at too. Not so much like what they were wearing, but what the makeup was. And
right. Because I remember calling out one time what one juror was wearing, and I got really dinged on that because it was a very flamboyant color. And I never did it again. I did it once on accident and I deleted that tweet and I never did it again. But yeah, I was the one who tipped off Ian and Rob. I was like, you guys, I think I'm onto something. You need to do this. And they're like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
On the drive back at that point, with the next to last week before I came back the second time.
And that was one of the things that, not like the news, like we watch it, but like I was saying, like you took it to a whole new level where you even saw Chanley Painter. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, but you saw it where she started to match the way that you were doing it. And so since I had been watching you, and then we're at the trial and I meet you, and I remember people were so generous, like giving donuts, giving coffee, the line holders and all that other stuff. And I was like, wow, this really is like a cool community. And then it was our lunch break. And I went out and I went live on Ricada. You were on your channel. And then you and we locked eyes and we sat. And I was like, are you hungry? And you were like, here, take my card, go in there and get chips or whatever the hell. Get me this, And then we were just like sitting in the little atrium area, just like mentally exhausted. But then you and I got to know each other, where I found out like where you were, what your background was. We have similar backgrounds and stuff like that. But we were just saying like how this trial, we were like, we've never seen anything like this, like not in the news, not in law, nothing. And you and I, that was when our friendship started. And then we had James from court and Vanessa and everybody else. And yeah, it was a blast. I miss those days.
I don't.
Honestly, yeah, okay. I miss them, but yeah, I absolutely do.
I see what you're saying. The nostalgia, I always tell people, again, I'm not shying away from the truth ever. I wish I could say I am this mastermind and I was sitting in my hive in Kentucky in early May going, something's a brewing and I have a plan. I had nothing. I was appearing on Nick's channel. I appeared on his channel like a month before or something like that, or he invited me on to be a guest on his nightly show. And we just talked about anything and everything. And that's how people have been telling me, like, dude, you need to go on Nick Rekieta. You need to go on Nick Rekieta. And I was like, I don't really do like guest appearances. I appeared on Rob Gouviera's channel once, like early 2021. And then I
just had him on my channel when he had a strike.
He's a cool dude. He's really fun. But like
super cool
going on his channel, I think he was his viewership that day when I was on his channel was like the lowest probably he's ever seen, because it's these two fucking lawyers, chatting away about the law, and people are like, snooze fest, give us the politics and the dirt and the juice that we're used to, not like, well,
what was like the lowest amount, like 1.4K. I mean, for any average YouTuber, that's still a lot. Yeah.
Like historically, and it's not because my face was on, although maybe that's part of the reason. I don't know. But the bottom line is, he was like the first one I actually went on, as far as I can remember. Then I had either gone on, I don't know, like Audit the Audit and Lackluster are both kind of a little bit synonymous in my head. They're both like First Amendment auditors for the
Hmm.
most part, and they do like police videos and all that. Really cool guys. And the reason they're kind of like, it's hard for me to separate them in my head, even though I know exactly who they are and their faces and everything and their
Hmm.
names. But it's that they're in that same arena. I remember I interviewed one, and then one did a video on me, and then one asked if they could take this video and do a video on it. So I was like, go for it. And then like I interviewed Lackluster. So I started doing a little bit. I started dabbling. And then Nick's name started getting popped up. Like, go, you gotta go on Nick. You gotta go. And
Right.
finally I caved after like Omicron wave had left. This was March, April of this year. I
Oh
went
God,
on
it's still
Nick's.
here. I just had COVID for Thanksgiving. It's ugh, trust
I
me.
hear it. I was gonna ask, are you like, I
Yeah.
can hear you're a
I'm
little
I'm a
congested.
little stuffed up. Yeah. I'm finally like out of like we're clear, we're out coming out of the woods. But yeah, I'm a little stuffed
Okay,
up.
good. All right. I'm glad to hear that. Because no, Dominique L says you missed the bubble you were in. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I love where I'm headed. It's
Yeah,
kind of like, how can I describe it? It's a natural progression. Because if you had
100%.
asked me like 3 years ago when I had, I don't know, 10,000 subscribers, that I would be here in 3 years, I would have never guessed.
No, me neither. I would have never. I remember I used to look at YouTubers and I was like, oh God, YouTubers, like, and then, you would watch like all their drama and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh God, these freaking YouTubers. But then, it just kind of sucks you in. And it's not even like, because like you and I, for example, like we don't do it for the money. Like we do it just to get a message out there.
Because
But
we
I
have
mean,
real jobs outside of YouTube.
exactly. We work 40 plus hours a week and then do this too. But one of the things that's interesting though is the thing that like and I'm sure I'm 100,000% sure for you it's the same. It's the audience that keeps you going. It's the audience that's like, please, like talk about this, talk about that. And you're
100%.
like, oh my God, like I don't know why these people want to listen to me talk, but apparently I'm doing something. And that's the fun part is
Pretty much.
it's you do it for the audience, which is a lot different for those that do it for the money. Not that they're doing it for different reasons, but there are people that can make a living off of it. I totally get it. Me, it's just more to get a message out.
Yeah. Yeah. And same for me. I used to stream on a very irregular basis, specifically for that reason. And then I realized, and this is purely a reactionary method, not methodology, reactionary thing, let's call it. I can't think of a word to fill in right now. People were saying like they really like my content, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just like, all right, that's cool, thank you. And then people keep saying it, and you're like, okay, cool, thank you. And then people keep
You're like,
saying it over.
why?
You're like, okay, do I need to do more of this? And people are like, yes, we need more of this stuff. And I'm just like, all right, I'm going to give this a shot. I don't know how long I'm going to last. I don't know what, like, you can never run out of content, but
Mm-hmm.
there are certain days when my job will take precedence over like
Right.
streaming. I know that's coming. Right now there's a lull, which is really nice, so I can like put a lot of energy and effort into this. But I feel so I'm starting to learn that there are kind of like two different types of YouTubers, really. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you may have even seen this. They're the ones who are like in their own little niche, and they get together and they do their lives on, and then they just talk about life, and then they go into little groups to have their panels of 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 people. Then there are the ones who try to like comment on things that are happening in the world, and I'm trying to be more so in the latter category. That's where my passion is drifting, because it's all about where your heart
Mm-hmm.
lies. I think there's no right or wrong way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a million different, I mean, look at Mr. Beast, for God's sake.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just crossed like 100 million subscribers, and he's just this high school kid with a dream, if you read his bio.
Yeah. And how he started to where he is now is completely different. I mean, even like before he got controversial, both the ones that I used to love watching was like Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star, where Jeffree Star just started as like a makeup dude that like got into everybody's drama. And then, and Shane Dawson just did like reaction videos, and now he's like making full on documentaries. Like I will say it is interesting when you do start seeing more and more people, I guess kind of get out of their shell, or like you can see that you can watch the progression happen, and that's where like, with fans that you have, like, who your original fans were, who the people were that were in your chats, like when you were a nobody. And then when you see them, still watching, it's like, okay, at least I'm doing something right. But people also love growing with you. They feel like, it's almost like a family, you know what I mean? Which I think is the fun part of it all.
Oh, completely agree. I completely agree, because without your subscriber base, without your viewers, you're just a talking head at a plastic device.
Exactly.
Really, I
Literally.
mean, literally.
Exactly.
So
So
it's really fun to see, like, especially when, in this world, it's very difficult to also build credibility, because we're
mhm.
not born with it. I think it was my grandmother who told me, and it's like an old adage, that it takes a lifetime to build a reputation, and it can take just 1 second to destroy it.
Mhm.
And
Is
that
this the
rings
Russian
true.
grandma? Is this the Russian
This is
grandma?
this is the Russian grandma.
Because my dad says that he says a very similar one. It says it's easy to be successful. It's harder to stay successful.
Yes, that's another one. It's the same thing. It's exactly right,
Mhm.
because you can build success and then have it vanish in an instant if you
Mhm.
make the right move, make the right call. Like, because what we all do on a daily basis is investments, not literal investments, as in like into the stock market or into a crypto or something, but we're investing our time and energy and money into certain things that we do in life. And sometimes they pay dividends, sometimes they don't, sometimes we make mistakes, and careers get ruined over that.
Oh, absolutely. And not even that, like, I mean, I've just even seen it in television where, you had the year of where it was Matt Lauer, Charlie Rose, Bill O'Reilly, literally every guy in television, was convicted, or not convicted, accused of SA, and you saw these careers just take a dive. And let me tell you, the weirdest part of it all was watching for example, like the whole Matt Lauer thing. When you
Mhm.
watch the morning show, if you've seen the morning show, it's pretty much based on the whole Matt Lauer situation and what happened. I had just started watching the morning show, and at my old network, I'm sitting in my office. I will never forget this. I'm sitting in my office and I see a guy walk by, and I'm like, why did that guy look so familiar? And then all of a sudden I poke my head out, and it's Matt Lauer was touring our network. And I was just like, does this guy really, like, who do you owe money to? Like, you really think you're going to be able to come back on TV after everything that happened? I mean, every girl was just like, nope, not doing it, but it's just, and that's the thing is here's this amazing career of what he did, but then it's just stupid decisions, and then boom, you're done.
Yeah.
And it happens.
No, definitely. And then, as we already started, I mean, I think we're almost coming full circle. The flip side of that is sometimes careers can be born out of thin air, like Law
Like
and
Law and
Lumber,
Lumber.
for
Yeah.
example. one
Yeah.
one week prior, he creates the channel. 1 week later, he uploads a video about the absolute logical physical realm fallacies about how the splinter would and should have occurred contrary to what the testimony was, uploads it to the internet. And during that time frame, I remember that's when I made the decision to go. And my initial intent, this is what I started with, my initial intent, I wish I could say I'm some mastermind that, I have an idea. My initial intent was to just watch the trial with Nick and do the commentary, which I did for a few days.
Hmm.
But then after Amber took the stand, I noticed a shift. Like the entire, it's almost like, the earth was like tilted in this direction for the entire
Mm-hmm.
time. And then after she took the stand, the earth tilted in the other direction,
And you
if
know
you
what
catch my
that
drift.
shift was? It was the Me Too movement went from this to this. It was the Me Too movement to where it was
Yeah.
Me Too to Men Too, you know?
Well, we didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it at the time, but
Right.
I just like, it's, you can't
Retrospectively,
explain
yeah.
it. It's like, I've been blessed with a very strong instinct, and it was telling me something. It was like, you need to like go and check this out. And my conscious mind was trying to make sense of it all. So it's like, all right, fine, I will go, but just to be in the courtroom for a day so I have a story. That was my initial intent. I was just gonna show up for a day. I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna have some stories. And then on like 2 days before I go, I remember I saw a comment and people were like, dude, there are two other law tubers who are also going. Like we're all independently of one another. A Canadian, a Virginian, and a Kentuckian. I don't
Yeah.
like, we didn't coordinate. There was no like, hey bro, listen, no, I was just like, what would be a really fun thing to do? All right, I'll go. And then same thing with Ian, same thing with Rob. And then we
Mm-hmm.
all converged and found out about each other. Like I think like the day before I messaged them and I was like, hey, so what's up? I'm going too. Like, what's
Yeah.
up? Where are you sleeping? Where are you like, what are you doing? And the rest
Yep.
is history.
Yeah. And like the other crazy part of it all too was, just when you're there and you're in the courtroom and you see them walk in. I mean, it's one of these things where folks like it's one thing to like see Johnny Depp, like where you're like, oh, he's right there, but like there's like just this whole. I mean, you remember like the one day that I was there with you. That was the day
Mhm.
when the girl was like, "Johnny, like this is your baby. What are you gonna
Baby
do?"
lady,
It was like,
baby lady.
what is going on? Like you would see like he would walk in and people would like get up and hi, like they
Mhm.
were like mesmerized by him. And that's where you started to see more and more of people being like, no, you can't shout anything, you can't do this, you can't do that, courtroom rules apply. But the thing was is that we were sitting on the Amber side. I remember that day. And when you would see her come out, mind you, the day before, when you and I were there at the same day, the day before, there was the whole thing about where like James had said that he heard her yelling when they opened the door, that they were her and Elaine were screaming at each other, and how it kind of like had gotten out to everybody. Even Court TV picked it up. And then you see her come out and she's a lot taller than you think. And she walks in and she's got this presence, but it's like a weird kind of a presence. And then
Mhm.
she goes and hugs Elaine like, and we were all just like, what the hell? I mean, you could just see just everything was a show with her. Everything was a
Do you
show.
remember after that day, every time she would come out? Well, I don't know if you were there, and if not, I will tell you. She would come out and be like, hi to her. Oh, hello, good morning. How are you? To everybody. That
Mm-hmm.
became like a theme that no, we're all good. And you could see how it felt manufactured. With Johnny, it was just natural, he would just be him. Whereas with her, it
Mm-hmm.
was like, all right, time to act nice. I need to put on the nice face today.
Yeah.
You can literally see
Hi.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, or is it
Uh-huh.
no?
Oh no, I was doing my toddlers and tiaras, the pretty face. I've been watching a lot of that show as I've been unpacking, and oh my god, I
Goes
have
to show
materials
what
for days.
well we I grew up on the kawaii, Japanese. Do you know what I'm talking about? Isn't that
The,
the or there's that too. Yeah, but like
yeah.
don't they do I know they do this a lot. They do the thing and I don't know. Whatever you grew up on, that's what you know. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh,
But
you're
yeah,
fine.
no. So and that was the other thing too, is like the other thing that you don't see is when you're in the courtroom and when they break and they all go up to the judge's bench, or they can be approached, and then you
Hmm.
hear that and you're like, wait a minute, you don't hear this on TV, and you have no idea. It sounds like a water, like 10 waterfalls falling on top of you, and it's so that you can't hear what's going on. But that's another thing that like the people don't see. That
Right.
was eye-opening to me, because in any other courtroom, like at least the ones, and maybe they've changed it or they've updated, but like when I was a young reporter reporting on court cases and they would do that, they would go up and they were very quiet, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, it was interesting for sure.
I guess I'm used to that sound because I've been in so many courtrooms throughout my life. In my
Hmm.
career, you forget that it's not the norm for a lot of people. Yeah, I can see why you thought that. In
Hmm.
California, they do something very interesting. At least in Los Angeles County, when I went to go see the Masterson and the Weinstein trial,
Oh.
the courtrooms are exactly the same. At least both of those two. You got the main bench where the judge sits, and she's towering over everybody like she's supposed to, or he.
Hmm.
Just both of these judges were female,
Hmm.
and there's like this little side, um, like bench, not bench. When I say bench, I don't mean like to sit on, but like a bench, like the judicial bench.
Hmm.
There's that doesn't have a microphone, but because they don't have like when I say and it's a microphone to amplify, not a microphone to record, which still blows my mind that California doesn't have video cameras and Kentucky does. Like what? But
Yeah.
anyway, but the reason they do that is because so the court reporter is right here. Okay, you have the judge right here on the bench, and then they would go when they do a sidebar. They just move over here so the court reporter can still hear and transcribe, even though because it's got to be preserved. The language has to be preserved.
Hmm.
So I found it really fascinating that that's their sidebar. They literally just walk off to the side
It's
and chat.
literally a sidebar. Yeah.
It's literally a sidebar. Yeah. Oh my God, it didn't even click. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
sidebar. It's a side
Hmm.
away from the main bench. It's kind of
Yeah.
fascinating.
I remember the first time I ever went into a courtroom. Um, Unbeknownst to many of you, it was when I was 16 and I got a speeding ticket. um, and I remember like, and mind you, my parents were like, "Nope, you're going. You're gonna have to go in front of a judge. You're gonna have to pay all that." And I was just like, "Oh no," I was like, "Why can't I just mail it in?" And they're like, "Nope, you're gonna go." Because my dad, being a lawyer, was like, "Oh, we need to scare the bejesus out of her, right? Like, don't ever break a
Right.
law." And so,
They have to
um,
scare you straight.
exactly, yeah, exactly. And but so I had always seen like Liar Liar and A Few Good Men are like my top two favorite lawyer movies. But even
Mm.
like if you like look at My Cousin Vinny, you look at all of these courtroom movies. The courtrooms are big and they have these columns, and like they're the windows. I remember the windows are like all frosted glass, and everything just seems so like Supreme Court looking like in the
Mhm.
movies. And then you get in there and it's like this little room, and I'm like, wait, this is the courtroom? And I'm like, wait, this, and my parents were like, oh God, no, it's backfiring, it's backfiring. And I was like, wait, this is the room I have to go in?
You
But
thought it would be like this arena where you walk in and you can't even the ceiling is so high you can't even see the ceiling,
it's
and
like the
there's like this
Coliseum. Judge
this
comes out.
booming. Where am I going, mommy? No.
Exactly. That's what I pictured. And then I'm like, this is like what? But that's the other thing too, is like, the truth is not as how it is in the movies. But with this though, I will say, with everything with Johnny Depp and what happened,
Mm,
what you saw, here's the one thing that was crazy to me is you really saw how bad of an actress she was,
mm,
because normally, there is a difference, and sometimes they say you have to overact, especially on stage. But and when it comes to a camera, you have to overact because the camera kind of diffuses it a little bit. Um, and you could see that not only was she overacting, but it was also like the camera for some reason picked up all of her overacting. Like that's how much she was overacting. And you're just like, God, this is like the worst like Macbeth performance I've ever seen, or whatever. It was just horrible. And then he was black. He was black. and you're like, what is going on? Like, I think one of the best reactions of that when she's like, it was black. Emily Baker's just like, like what is going on, girlfriend? But yeah, it was so bad, so bad, and I'm sure you even know too. I think with lawyering, there's a little bit of acting that goes along with it, especially in trials. Where
Definitely,
you're on a
100%.
stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on a stage, and I mean, if I was Johnny's lawyers, I would not have been able to keep a straight face. I mean, I would have had a really hard time, especially
There
it
were a
was
lot of
black.
moments. There were a lot of moments
Yeah.
when they couldn't. I mean, remember the Kate Moss moment. I don't know if you were there that day, but were you there when Amber was on the stand, right? On cross or direct?
No, I was there when Dr. Spiegel was there.
Oh, Spiegel. So that was, wait, what day was that? That was, oh, that
That
was the
was
following week. That was the
that was
last week.
the first day of
Yes.
Amber's defense, and we were like, this is who you're gonna call. And it
Yes.
was, yeah.
That was like that Monday, like the last
Mhm.
Monday of the last week of the trial.
Yep.
So the week prior, that Monday, right a week before you came, I was there, and that's the day that Ian and Rob and I were all we got in. The only day I did not take notes because I did not plan this shit, like I said.
Yeah.
Um, they were the ones taking notes, as a matter of fact. I was not. Um, she was on the stand, and that's the day she mentioned the Kate Moss incident. And I know as an attorney, you have to maintain like keep it together, Chew, keep it together, Ben. Like,
Mhm.
but and there's a photo circulating on the internet, and it's true because it happened in that same moment. As soon as she said, "Well, I've heard, like that he abused and prior girlfriends like Kate Moss," and Ben Chew just turned, and I'm gonna pretend like I'm turning into the camera, but this is him turning
Mhm.
behind his chair, and he looks at not Camille, but the other the attorneys that are sitting in the back, and he just goes, like, he fist pumps, like,
Yeah. Mhm. He's
yes,
like, yeah.
we
Mhm.
got this. Now she opened the door. We weren't planning on calling Kate Moss. We had her in reserve. You just allowed us. I mean, and if I'm a juror and I'm sitting there and you see everything, like don't pretend like I can't see you, Ben.
Mhm.
I know exactly what you're doing, but there are moments when you can't maintain. You have to release that emotion, and you have to just have a moment, because you're sitting in that room for hours every day. You leave the courtroom. It is us who go, oh my God, you won't believe what happened in court today. They go and they're like, all right, what's our next strategy? What happened today?
Yeah.
What are we doing tomorrow? Who are they calling tomorrow? What do we need to prepare for? Da 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 da. Like I don't know I don't even know if they slept for 6 weeks, honestly.
Oh, probably not. Absolutely not. I mean, even like with the amount that like Rakeda, was streaming it, day in and day out. And where he was, then they would have their analysis afterwards, and that those lawyers then would go back to the hotel. They'd be probably sitting there till 10 o'clock at night, figuring out the next day. No, I don't think that they slept that much at all. But I feel like, it's like those 6 weeks, that's like, it's like the Olympics, like
Yeah,
you're just all in,
that's it. Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. That's the marathon. That's the final, like, you've been training for 12 years and you're finally
Yep.
giving it all, basically,
Yeah.
is what it feels like.
The craziest part of the trial, though, I will say, and I've covered a lot of trials, is literally every single witness was a character. I mean, like in their own way.
Mhm.
Like when we sat, when it was you, myself, James from Court, and Vanessa, when we figured out which actors would play who, that
Oh
whole
God,
list. I
that
mean,
was so much fun.
if you didn't watch all the trial, folks, I mean, literally every person is their own character. From
True.
Isaac Baruch, starting with him, I don't know, it's whatever Johnny wants, and you're just like, what is going, and then the doctor, what was her name, Donna, whatever, she was a total bitch to her. She was just like, no, that's wrong. It was Amber's doctor. To Dr. Curry, where she's just like, No, that she was a pathological liar, and you're just like, this is just great. And then Kate Moss, if you know, for the layup at the end, you're just like, and the whole, it was truly like theater. I mean, just, and the part that I will say that was, you know, really boring, the most boring part of it was, I would say, the second act, which would have been Amber's part, where she brought in all these experts that literally proved nothing.
Mhm.
You really got nothing out of it. And that's where I think the jury, to her detriment, started to kind of fall asleep. Um, and they fell asleep during the experts, because she just brought in so many experts that
Mhm.
they kind of just, okay, you know, but no, it truly was a made for TV movie. I guess I haven't seen the movie that's come out, but I've heard it's meh.
Me neither. Yeah, that's why. That's exactly why, because I heard it's literally just another PR attempt at spinning Amber's story. It's like a last resort. If you didn't watch the trial and you watch that, you'll probably go, "Oh my God, Johnny is such a POS. Like, how could he do this to her?" kind of thing. That's their
Mhm.
attempt at doing that because they know the majority of the population who still cared, which was still a very small percentage, but it was there. Um, did not watch the trial will watch this. So, because it's
Right.
an hour and a half versus 800 hours.
Right. And that was the thing, is I had never really heard of LawTube until the Kyle Rittenhouse trial.
Mm. So
And that's,
you knew this about it ahead of me because I didn't even know about LawTube until Johnny Depp.
yeah. And see, for when I had my primetime international show, I, you know, was always looking at everything, and like, you know, I was covering you know, domestic to international stuff. But when I was covering specifically the Rittenhouse trial, because a lot of people around the world were like, what is going to happen? Like, this is a Second Amendment issue. Like, the United States is really big on this. You know, people all in Europe were like, what are they going to do? Because it truly was a self defense case. And, you know, everybody in the media was calling him, you know, a white supremacist, you know, all this other stuff. Kyle Rittenhouse, that is.
Hmm.
And I had just typed in Kyle Rittenhouse on YouTube, and I was like, let's just see what other people are saying. And then it was the
Mm.
clip of Ricada, Legal Mindset, and Legal Bites, where they're like, oh, that's it, that's it. Where the guy's like, yeah, you know, it went to aim at him first, showing that it was self defense. And I was like, oh my God, these are like all lawyers watching this. And I had it in an opening monologue of mine. You know, like how Tucker and a lot of the other news anchors, they have like a long opening monologue. That's how my show was. And so I had that clip of them in my show. And that's where I first kind of had heard of Nick. And then I saw, you know, at night, you know, he had a completely different style of a show, but learned a lot about, you know, the law, and like learned it in a completely different way. But the part that was just so fascinating to me was just, you have all of these lawyers with different,
Hmm.
you know, backgrounds. Um, you know, and that, like, again, like, who would have thought, you know, not to bring it back to Law and Lumber, but like, who would have thought that one of the lawyers watching this trial happens to be a woodworker and knows how wood breaks, and, you know, happen to see that, you know, it's just, it's truly mind-blowing when you bring in all these great minds, all these great legal minds, and you guys all have different backgrounds, and you're all able to see something the same but also different too. And that was the thing that was very fascinating to me.
Because we all
But
bring something different to the table. We all come from different experiences and walks of life. And
for you, it was how to read a jury. I mean, you could tell that you go to trial, you are a trial lawyer. And you could see just by the way you would break people down. I mean, I learned a lot from you too, where, you know, it's, you know, because as a journalist, we have to break people down and think, okay, are they telling me the truth or are they not? Whereas
mm,
you have to think, are they siding with my client or not? Like, not only do they believe me, are they going to defend my client, you know? And it's just,
mhm.
it's the whole psychologicalness of it. It was super fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's I came into that jury when it was very ripe, and I got a chance to see a big portion of it. I tried to apply the same principles to the Masterson and the Weinstein juries, but it's definitely not
Hmm.
as easy. I mean, I think I already admitted the fact that I cannot read Weinstein's jury. They're all over the place. But I still think based on what I have seen, which is extremely limited, 2 days of testimony, and they're all prosecution cases, and prosecutorial witnesses. I think they're going to convict, but they're not going to convict on the whole. They're just over it. Like Weinstein's jury is just like, can we please get on with it?
Mhm.
And my source on the ground tells me that the defense witnesses that were put on, at least yesterday, have not really delivered any weight to the case. Meanwhile, Masterson across the hall, which is over, and I got to see
Which is
no
so weird that they're
testimony.
across the hall from each other.
I know, right? Welcome to Hollywood. It's literally you're
Literally.
in the TMZ, you're in the 3 mile zone, like literally,
Mhm.
you know, and talk about a 3 meter zone because they're like right there.
Yeah.
The Masterson trial across the hall, I got a chance to see no testimony, but I got a chance to read them during closing, and it was fascinating that. So I got a chance to meet Harvey Weinstein's former PR publicist, who was in
Oh
the
God.
courtroom in Masterson, and she was also she came from Weinstein. She wanted to see how her former client was doing, and it turns out not so good.
Mhm.
But she popped into Masterson. That's where I met her on the second day, I believe, on that Tuesday when I was in California. And
Mhm.
she, like, we kind of talked about it. And she said, oh my God, like, they're 100% going with the defense. And I went, what? Like, were we watching the same jury? I thought they were 100% prosecution. And now
Mhm.
the same thing. And I kind of already learned this, though. I learned this during the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial because the one day I was not permitted to be let in, that Friday, that
Mhm.
last day when closing arguments for both sides happened. Um, Ian and Rob and a bunch of other people were inside the room. I remember their tweets. I'll never forget them because I remember I was on Nick Rekieta. It was me, Legal Vices, Free Book, Bronca, as we all know him, but I still call him
Free
Free
book.
Book because it's just that's how that was on his screen. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his
Oh,
name
that's
at the time. I
funny.
know his name now, but I used to call him
Uh-huh.
because I didn't know. It was like Free Book, Law of Self Defense, Free Book. I'm giving him free advertising for all it's worth. So
Exactly. Yeah.
you know,
Oh. Mhm.
Legal Vices, me, Nick, and Freebook, and we were listening to the arguments of the closing arguments of both sides, and I was literally like, I was not alone. We were all in agreement, in unison. Like the defense argument is so dry and pathetic and boring and incomprehensible, has no cogency, it's incoherent, it's all over the place. And we were all like, yes, 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 I agree with all of those statements. There's not one of us of the four. And, it's only four of us, and we're like minded individuals for the most part, I imagine.
Mhm.
But we still, the fact that we were all in agreement and there was like no hesitation on either of us to go, well, you know what, you guys, I think they make some good points. We should maybe give them a little, like, none of us were like, no, they got nothing. And
Right.
meanwhile, I was reading the tweets of Ian and Rob, and they're like defending. They're like, "Oh yeah, the defense has made some really good arguments," and I'm just like, "What are?" They made me doubt everything that I have written about, And after the jury came back, I was like, "Okay, Larry, moving forward, just trust your gut. Do not listen to other people who try to put in because they're putting not. Don't listen to them, but don't take their opinion and let it affect yours. You can listen to them and take
Right.
into consideration as to where they're coming from, and of course they have a different and maybe even more interesting viewpoint on the world than you have, Larry. But stay true to yourself and fly close to the vest with your own personal observations and opinions, because it's a trust your gut moment. That was the trust
Exactly.
your gut moment. So when I heard that, I was like, oh my God. And she made me doubt myself for like 5 seconds. And I went, wait a minute. But I was there. This is what I saw. This is what I believe. And I'm holding true to myself. And we still don't know what the answer is. We don't know if the Masterson jury is going to convict or not.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is the biggest thing I think. Even like in news stories I've seen like where I've interviewed people and you know, like even just like senators and congressmen and I'll talk to, so and so and I'll be like, "Yeah, he said that they're going to, he wants to get this done, by this date." And then somebody else will tell me like, oh, well, when I talked to him, it didn't seem that way. And I'm like, no, it seemed that way. Like I totally know what you're saying, because there is just this weird human instinct that many of us have, where you just got to trust your gut. And there was like one time where I didn't, and I was like, son of a bitch. But it was, I could have broken a story and I didn't. But learned a lesson though of, always go with your gut, because your gut's there. That is literally, your intuition telling you something. And so,
Yes.
I totally know how that feels. But what was it like in the Masterson trial? He's sitting in the courtroom, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, him and his whole posse. So Christopher, his brother his brother Jordan, I think his name is. I'm starting to forget a little bit. It's been a short while, and it's not priority for me to remember these names. But his wife is there. A few Scientology buddies. What's his name? One of the Baldwins, the younger Billy Baldwin, showed up.
Billy Baldwin was my favorite Baldwin. Oh, backdraft. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
had a moment. Squirrel.
Yeah, I got to meet Tony Ortega, and we exchanged a few grunts. That's about the extent of it. But then I got to meet a few other people. I met like several former Scientologists. I in the
Oh
same week
boy.
I got invited to do a show on like Colonel Kurtz, the Gaia sisters, growing up in Scientology, and I think there was one more, but maybe just those three. So that was fun. Again. This is the thing that I think people don't realize. I don't do things because I'm like, well, I wonder what's going to generate views. Like, sure, that's the underlying theme. I'm not going to lie. But I always go like, what's going to be fun for me? What is something that
Mhm.
I have not done yet? Like, what is a way for me to test my mettle? And for me, this was a way. And I'm like, let's just roll with it. If I was in the courtroom for 6 weeks during the whole trial, I think I would be able to give a much better assessment, but
Mhm.
I can't abandon my business and like do this full time yet. Although you never know what the future holds. At
Right.
the end of the day, even though we're not doing this for the money will eventually be the determining factor as to whether or not like you or I or anybody else can do this in the future. Like I know Nick, he hung up his shingle, he had a business, and he doesn't do that anymore. He does YouTube full time. Why? Because he is self-sufficient on these platforms like Rumble, YouTube, locals, and all that. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't say it's like a goal for me because it never has been, but I'm not discarding it outright. Like I never, but I'm also not like, all right, I have a business plan. How do I make YouTube a full-time job either? It's
Right.
kind of like a go with the flow, see what happens.
Right. And one of the things that, you and I have talked about before behind the scenes is, there are YouTube creators that, obviously they do this to be sustainable and to kind of sustain an audience for a long period of time. Like there's, like you were saying, like there's two types of YouTubers, before like your two types. I see two types as far as the long game versus the short game.
Mm,
Where there are some people where, like a Nick Rekieta, where not only does he do the law, but then he'll also go into politics. He says like, I'm like kind of the Howard Stern at night, like the old time Howard Stern, whatever. And that's a long game thing because you're not pigeonholing yourself. Then
right.
there's others like, where they will, they'll cover, hot events and whatnot. They'll jump in and cover drama. They'll cover, other channels when they're fighting, or they'll cover, political events that are like hot right now. And it's like, it's tough for that because sometimes in all of that you can make enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things where you want to keep yourself open and broad, and kind of like cast a wide net out, and not burn any bridges or anything like that. And that's where you see, okay, like that's the two different types. And it's been interesting to watch, just kind of getting into the YouTube space because I haven't been in it that long. Like I said, I just used to just post my report videos. But going back to your point though on what's interesting for you, I'm the exact same way. When I build a show, it's like, okay, not only what's interesting to me, but I mean, I got to sit up here and talk about it. So if I have to talk about it and I'm not interested in it, why am I going to talk about it? There's certain things, certain things here and there, for example, like the war in Ukraine. Sometimes, people, it's not interesting to talk about, but when you get into the nitty gritty with certain things, it can be interesting just in the way that countries see each other and who's friends and who's foe, almost kind of like a whole soap opera thing going on there and looking at it from that point of view. But like talking about war is not fun, talking about the debt ceiling, is not fun. But if you talk about, the enemies that people are making in politics right now, I mean, politics, it's show business for ugly people. There's always something going on. Truly. But it has to be interesting.
I've never heard anyone refer to it that way, but that actually really works. I never thought about it.
Oh, I can't even take credit for that. That's from Roger Stone. If you've ever seen the documentary Get Me Roger Stone, one of the best documentaries. I tell people, if you love politics, you have to watch it. Because he's the guy that invented the super PAC, or not the super PAC, he invented super PACs, where you have a number of coalitions and they donate to candidates. That had never been done before, and he was one of the guys that really changed the game. He made it so that third parties, it's very hard to break in and being a third party. You see a lot of stuff that he's had a hand in, and you're like, wow, this one guy. And I've met him a bunch here in DC, and it's just so fascinating to talk to him because he's one of those guys. And like when you meet people like this, like become friends with them because it's like, when they can see what's coming down the pipeline, like how you saw with the trial where you're like, something's happening here. You can feel it. And you just went with your gut. That's how Roger Stone is with politics. And so like when you see people like that, follow them, learn from them because they clearly can see something that you can't. And they're in all aspects of life, from politics to law with you to YouTube to whatever. And yeah, that's the one thing that's been super eye-opening here in DC is people here, they don't think in terms of like every 2 years or every 4 years. They're thinking 6, 8, 12 years down the line. They're already like, yeah, we got like the next 2 years sorted out. We're thinking like 2028. And you're like, can we like get stuff done now though? Like we have stuff going on right now that we need to fix,
And that is the danger, I guess. And this is a great segue. And I've been waiting to highlight this comment. Julio is like, about that damn time that Faran chick showed up. So there she is in all her glory and delivering on her promise. I think so far this has been really fun. Tell us about your okay, somebody called this. I didn't know this. I don't track you, unlike maybe some people are. Apparently on my Twitter, don't ask me. But I advertised that we're going to be doing this today, and somebody was like, well, didn't you just move out of DC? And you're like, yes, I did. And now I'm moving back because I have an opportunity. Tell us about that, because I'm sure everybody's curious, including myself. I know I've got like the broad brush picture from you, but like what's next for Faran? Why did the rat hole DC drag you back in?
I know, right? And it's been raining here the past 3 days, and there's just been rats everywhere. So it's literally a rat hole.
Oops, I didn't mean to
no, I'm just saying you're not fake news. Yeah. And that's the thing that's crazy is on the East Coast, there's so many rats. It's like, why? But no, so I was congestion. In probably that. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, it's just weird, especially being in the Midwest and not having rats like that. But no, so I was in DC for 4 years. I had my own international primetime show every night where I had like 2 to 3 million people around the world watching me at night. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This was from 2019 to 2022 of March. Yeah.
That's like earlier this year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was shut down. The network was shut down because of the war in Ukraine. And we talked about this too when we were at the trial. It was RT America. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's the Russians. And I was very much against the invasion. I've talked about it. I talked about it on my show. I was never told what I could and couldn't say. I worked with all Americans at the network, including Larry King was on our network, Dennis Miller, the late great Ed Schultz from MSNBC. Matt Lauer was getting ready to come on board, and we were like, no. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, just a number of different people that of just like political minds and even like business minds too, that were kind of kicked out of the mainstream media. Me, I wasn't kicked out of the mainstream media. I was just sick and tired of reporting in local news. And the higher up that I kept going in markets, I was like, I feel like I'm just another like, person just like on the assembly line, just, shoot out a story, and where I really saw it was when I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I was doing the story on the GM recall. It was about the pedals, if you remember this back in the day, where it was like 2018.
Yes.
And
bunch
a
of
number
layoffs.
of
There was like 80,000 layoffs or something. Was that it?
Well, no, it was a recall where it was the pedal was sticking. And there was a girl, it was a number of people died. A number of people died because they have a number of class action lawsuits because of this. And there was one girl that I had come into contact with who was a Michigan resident who was in an accident because of it and lost her either her right or her left leg, and but lost one of her legs and completely had to redo her life. And that's the thing is when you don't realize with an amputee, like you think like, oh, like just throw a thing on it and you'll be fine. Like, no, your life completely up and changes the way even the way she had to learn how to walk again. It's things that we don't think about. And so I went to my news director and I was like, hey, I haven't, sounds jaded, but I was like, I have this amazing person that I can talk to. She's got a great story about this, the recall and how it changed her life and yada, yada, yada. And she was like, I love it. She's like, but we're never going to get past sales. And I was like, why? And she was like, GM's one of our biggest donors. And I was like, wow, really? And that's where, and that was one of the things that Walter Cronkite said. He was like, the minute you bring in advertising, the news is gone. The journalism is dead. And that's when I realized, you know what? This is kind of a little bit weird for me, but like, there's this international network that reached out to me. Let's see what they're all about. And it's a brand spanking new studio. I got my hair and makeup done every day. It was a true network. And we reported everything domestically happening in the United States. We didn't really cover we weren't the ones saying how great Putin was. I didn't have a red phone to Putin, that went straight to Putin. It wasn't anything like that. It was basically, domestic stuff that we covered, and we covered a lot of stuff that was awesome. But yeah, so then when the war in Ukraine happened and sanctions started happening, we got shut down. Along with a number, they were actually right now they're trying to shut down the Chinese news network. Because here in DC, you have your US networks, but then you also have many international networks here too, like DW, TRT, RT America, France 24, the Italian network. I mean, they're all here. So when I would be doing live shots, I'm in line with all of these other people speaking 10 different languages next to me. And then you'd see your CNN, ABC, Fox, all them too. So sure. It's crazy how the press pool works. But no, so I was here in DC. Many of the RT America and even the Chinese news network people were kind of getting blacklisted. And I was kind of like, you know what? I'm just kind of chilling, watching this Johnny Depp trial. Joe reaches out and boom, it was history from there. Right. And then I actually got approached by this new network called Newsnet. Now it's very young, up and coming national network, very, very new. It's actually the founder of 5 Hour Energy. He's a multi-billionaire.
I remember you telling me about that.
And he, go figure, he's like, I'm tired of paying for advertising. Why don't I just buy a network? Literally.
Sounds legit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would do if I had $1 billion.
But the thing that I love about the network, though, is that he's like, I want things fair. I don't want any crazy gotchas. I don't want that. I just want straight, like their motto is the way the news used to be. And my job here now is going to be opening up the DC bureau and kind of, eventually down the line hiring reporters, cultivating reporters, stuff like that. But my job right now is not only opening up that bureau, it's going to be interviewing congressmen and senators every week and just talking with them. And even my boss was like, I don't want gotchas. I don't want, hit pieces. He goes, I just want you to just sit and talk with these people. He's like, very much like Barbara Walters. And when I heard Barbara Walters, I was like, I grew up watching Barb all the time. She was one of my favorites, her, Diane Sawyer, and Joan London. And I was like, this clearly is like a dream job in the making. I can't say no, even though it's a swamp here, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I named my price and they were like, oh, that's it. And I was like, actually, I could do more.
Oh, shit, I fucked up. I should have asked for more.
Exactly. But yeah. And so I couldn't, I'm, as they say, I'm happier than a pig in shit. Because I will say, I do love politics. It's been my way of life. I mean, God, I feel,
sorry to interrupt. I'll hold that thought. But, I feel like every network starts out that way with good intentions. And no, I'm not saying Newsnet is going to get there, but I believe in my heart of hearts that like whenever it was 50 years ago, because if you go back and watch the reels, that's what we got. We actually got news. They actually went out and were like, well, what happened here? Tell us. And they would write it down and they'd be like, this is what I heard today. This is what they told me. And they're like, wow, that's interesting. And they were actually disseminators of information. But as they grew and grew and grew and the whole cycle, when did the cycle of 24-hour news begin? Like late 80s, early 90s?
I would say early 90s with CNN.
I remember I finished the documentary. If you haven't seen it, it's called Pepsi, Where's My Jet? On Netflix. It's about this kid who saw a loophole in the there was a commercial and you could earn like Pepsi points in the early 90s or late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And in the very, very end, it was like, there was a jet and it's like 7 million points and there was no fine print. And he was like, and he did the math and he realized this jet is like worth $300 million and I can buy it basically for like $3 million. And he collected 3 million points, which all it was is he bought the points. He didn't like collect Pepsi cans because that would take about 35 years. If I have 35 years, I mean like 35,000 years of Pepsi. Anyway, long story short, he actually, he got an offer, spoiler alert, he got an offer from Pepsi and a pretty decent one. I'm not going to reveal it in case some of you want to watch it. And he rejected it to go for the whole kit and caboodle. And his case, again, I don't want to spoil it for those of you who want to watch it because I couldn't put it down. I was up until like 3:00 in the morning one night because I'm like, this is fascinating. I'm not even tired. This is so cool. It's only like 4 hours or something. He ended up in the law books. I actually don't remember if I read his case when I was in law school, but it's a classic contracts case. Like we have an offer acceptance consideration type deal. And it makes sense how he made it in history. Like he may or may not have recovered monetary gain from it personally, but he is forever entombed in many, many law books and millions of law students have already read his case and millions more in the future will. So it's kind of fascinating. It became like a textbook example of contract law. So
oh yeah, like that was how what was the case with oh God, what was the Gawker versus Hulk Hogan? I mean, that whole case where it was they found, a private sex tape that they were given and they published it. And, like that's a big one. That's another documentary on Netflix too that's interesting. But there's just a number of cases that have happened and you realize like why certain states or why certain areas or fields are the way that they are. Like, for example, there's it's the series Trial by Media. And my favorite one, just because I'm a Chicago kid, is on Rod Blagojevich.
Oh no.
Uh-huh.
The Trial of the Chicago 7, I thought is where you were going to go. Anyway.
Oh, no. But that's a great movie though, too. No, but this one, it's a series called Trial by Media. And it's how these certain different trials have changed the way the media works. And the one big one is Rod Blagojevich, former governor of Illinois, who was caught on tape selling Barack Obama's Senate seat, which, I mean, a lot of people say he was really set up and all this other crap. Illinois is super corrupt. I mean, that's why when I came to see DC, I was like, they got nothing. I'm from Chicago.
I've been practicing all my life.
Exactly. But that's why when you look up now, journalists have to learn recording laws. And journalists have to learn, is it a one-party consent state or an all-party consent state? Because at the time, Illinois was a one-party, or there really was no recording laws. It was just, there was the wiretapping laws. And this, though, was recording his phone calls. Somebody was on the line with him, recording him. And at that time, there really wasn't any law that said you can or can't do that. Then, a lot of other states were like, oh, we're gonna, and it's the most corrupt states are all party consent states, where every person on the call has to say, yes, I know you're recording, and yes, I give my consent. Like New York, Illinois, California, DC is, I believe, a one-party consent, but like Texas, like you can just record whatever the hell you want, like it's crazy.
There's a reason why I think Europe calls us are there any Europeans in the chat? I forget. It's like they either call us like the American experiment or the experiment in the Americas. And like, we're basically like the guinea pigs for Europeans to like, well, let's see what happens when they do this. And then they're like, okay, this worked, so we're going to adopt it into our laws. This didn't work. We should probably not look at that. Or, you know what? Ours mirrors what the Americans are doing, and theirs is failing. We should probably mulligan and try something else. It's But so the reason I brought up that documentary is because there's actually a moment when he says, I believe that's when the news cycle became 24 hours. So I'm circling back, every news station, I believe, in its heart of hearts, at the outset, when they create the network, their intentions are pure. But when you have to do, you cannot do news 24 hours a day without it turning into entertainment at some point. But people continue to believe, because I actually only learned this recently. When I say recently, I mean this past year, is that, because I never grew up around news. We never watched the news. We only did it when we lived in Israel because, well, we were surrounded by Arabs and we're in a tiny little country, this big. So we needed to know, like, are we being invaded? Do we need to run for our lives? Kind of thing.
I didn't know that you lived in Israel.
Kind of important. Yeah. Back when I was a kid. So back then, news was very, very important for us. But now, like, news, when we came to the States when I was like 13, we never watched the news ever. So I remember like hearing people talk about Fox and CNN and their biases. And now I just learned, this year that they're not even like news. They're just entertainment. They have like 1 hour of news segment, but they have like Fox on the bottom and you think you're watching the news. That the public is so, brainwashed on this, like they're a news network. So if they're 24 hours a day, they're news. They're giving you news 24 hours a day. And that's where all this spewing of nonsense comes from, because they need to keep your attention. They're competing for views because that's ad revenue. That's who's going to come. Again, it's all one giant blob of who's going to get there first. And meanwhile, you have your network with Newsnet, who's got his own money with the 5-hour energy drinks that he's been selling. He built his empire, he made his money, and he doesn't, at this juncture, need that influx. And for the first, I hope forever, he will be, have like this organization that will actually focus on getting the news and getting it raw. That came out wrong. You know what I'm trying to say? Getting the raw pieces, not like...
Right.
Not going in dirty, like sitting in the bushes and being like, all right, let's see if that senator is like cheating on his wife, like, I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. And the when it started to change, actually, you can actually pinpoint. So CNN started the 24-hour news cycle, and they started Very much like how, you know, my company wants to start, was they were just straight news. But then they would have analysis, you know, they were dubbed like news and analysis. What changed the game was when Fox News came on the scene. Roger Ailes was the former like news director over, I believe it was NBC, and he came over to Fox, and I mean, he changed everything in news down to what an anchor woman looks like. I mean, there's a reason I went from wearing pantsuits to dresses every single newscast. Okay, news anchors, if you look in like the 1980s, we would have, you know, they'd have like the pantsuits, the turtleneck, you know, very, you know. Then you go to, you know, today, and chicks, you know, got the tight little dresses, the high heels. He changed the game, and he was an evil genius, where he said, you know, people don't know how to think, so do it for them. And that's where, you know, he wanted anchors that were very emotional. He wanted anchors, you know, he wanted it where guests would come on and there would be these fights. You know, basically just really just changing the way that people watch the news and the way that they saw the news. And that's where CNN, being the other 24-hour news cycle, looked at it and said, okay, they're going right. I guess we're going to have to go left. And that was the other thing too, is that Roger Ailes, he said, I don't want to appeal to the masses. I want to appeal to rich white men, because that's where the advertisers are going to come. And that's why Fox News has the biggest budget, because that is who they appeal to. Yes. But I mean, then there's also, you know, it's grown since then, where now it appeals to a much wider audience. Same with CNN. There's more people in the world. But yeah, it's just interesting though, when you watch how the news has really transformed to what it was to what it is. And I think we're at a time where people, you know, we're at a time where people are almost kind of they're exhausted from it, you know, where, you know, like, for example, you're seeing this whole thing now with Trump in the news, where he went to dinner with Kanye and Nick Fuentes, and people are kind of like, okay, yeah, like Trump's a crazy person. We know this. Can we move on? You know, but it's like today on Capitol Hill, and when I was there, I mean, the whole thing is this railway crisis, but everybody's asking about, how do you feel about Trump? And everyone's just like, and we can see who's asking those questions. We know Fox, CNN, MSNBC, everybody else is like, railway strike. Like, what's going on with that? When are you going to get that passed? Which, by the way, they have a bill coming out tomorrow that they're supposed to vote on it like 9 a.m., Nancy Pelosi says. But yeah, it's just one of these things like, I wish it just was back to news, you know, and hopefully that's what this network is. I don't think he doesn't want to change it, because he's been on Fox, he's been on CNN, Manoj, the CEO, and he's very much like me. I hate them all, you know. I know what their end game is, you know, but yeah.
Julio says, Faran gave Daryl Brooks the scoop on the Ford recall.
Oh, God.
She's killing it tonight. She's 2 for 2 now. But yeah, I mean, look, with doing daily shows now on my channel, I can tell you that it's, forget not easy. I had this talk with my publicist the other day, yesterday actually, and I was like, man, like I find myself talking like a TV anchor, like I was when I was growing up, you know. Tonight at 11, and then tomorrow join us for, like, that's literally what I'm doing. That's what I'm starting.
That's what we call a tease in the business, by the way.
a tease. There you go.
A tease,
I'm
yes.
teasing my audience. Tomorrow, you don't want to miss, you know, Fair and Balanced, the DUI guy go head to head talking about bullshit, you know, like it's fun to me. Again, I'm doing this, like I said, because I'm testing some things out. I want to see how it rolls, and I think because the people are hungry. I wouldn't have done this, but for the consistent and persistence the consistency and persistence of my audience saying like we want more. And I'm like, okay, I will try. There's only so much I can do, but there's always going to be new stuff. But here's the problem, because like you have your day job, right? And I don't have a 9 to 5, thank God, because I would probably die. I need my own life too. So I have like my associates, they do a lot of the work, then I'm able to work around my own schedule, do all the stuff that I need to do. And then I need to like, if I don't have something planned for the evening, which for now I have plans for Wednesday, I have plans for Friday, I think, and maybe when third, I don't know. It's all like up in the air. There's some things that I need to iron out. But well, I definitely have the TRO reading. I'm going to finish that up, or watching and reacting tomorrow, and then we have potentially we're going to have the brief. Johnny's brief was filed on the 2nd, and Amber's response is going to be due on the 2nd. So that should be coming up literally Friday. So we're gonna get our hands on that. So you have your plan, but eventually the well on that in that regard is gonna dry up, or so I think, because every time I'm like, all right, what's gonna be my next idea? I get like a DM and somebody's like, hey, have you thought about this? Or do you mind if I come on the show? And it's like, I haven't thought about it, but since you asked.
Since I need content, sure. Yeah, exactly.
It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
And that's one of the things that is fun, like when you are building a community and people give you suggestions and you're like, you know what, that's actually not a really, bad idea. And then that person sees that you actually covered, something that they asked you to. And then, it's one of these things where it's like, oh my gosh, that they tell their friends. I give them, suggestions all the time, and he takes them. And that's one of those things like where when your audience feels like you're listening to them, that's the biggest thing that I see transferring from TV to YouTube is, oh, thank you, Love Rain Thunder, is that from TV, like we used to get people that would email us all the time, even the people of, why did you wear that dress today? I hated it. And you're like, thank you. You don't know why people feel compelled to email you, but with YouTube and streaming, it's weird because like in TV, I would do a newscast and then I would get emails. Whereas here streaming, you're getting, the whole thing, right at your finger, like right away. You're seeing their comments right away. And you're kind of like, oh, wow, like, okay. And it's this instant reaction that you get that's so interesting. Like, for example, like I see Kay has been trolling me this entire time. And I don't know why she wants to be a bitch to me, but go ahead and be a bitch.
I don't read chat. When they start trolling, I just try to ignore those messages. I read chat.
But I've seen her criticize him in the past and dismiss his opinions. No, I've never done that because Larry and I are friends. But that's the other weird thing about YouTube though too, is you have these parasocial relationships. Is people like, once they become your audience, then a lot of these people feel like they know you, or they know everything that you've done, or they know everything about you. And you're like, nah, not quite. Like maybe, but not quite,
I've learned here, and here's the thing, and you will see this too, you probably already have. I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't put words in your mouth. Let me just speak about myself. What I have noticed, and you may have too, is that the bigger you grow and the bigger your audience becomes, there is a lot more filtration that you have to do. You can't just take words for like words' sake, and people's especially people who you don't know, because there are some very interesting people out there in the world. I mean,
yeah, there are.
When I tweet some things, I've in the beginning, I will never forget this, like because prior to May of 2022, consider that I didn't have a Twitter. I had like 800 followers and they didn't give a shit about what I posted. Because I had nothing. I had no content on Twitter. And then after the trial, I walk out with like an eighth of a million, so it was like I remember I even posted like, I'm sorry you guys, I don't know how Twitter works yet, like please forgive me. And they're like, don't worry about it, like it's all good, da da da.
I remember
And
that.
it was, do you remember that? It was a
Yeah.
learning curve. And
Yep.
then like
I
I
was like, get
remember,
ready, strap in, Larry.
oh God, it's oh. Anyway, but
Yeah.
as I started to learn the game, you know, a little bit more, and I started to understand it and who the players are and who to like pay attention. Because sometimes I would get like a nasty comment like, Larry, you are a this and that and a such and such, and it got like 50 likes, and I'm like, oh, like what happened? What did I do? And then now I learned like just click on it, and it's like Amber Heard Sport, Amber Heard Sport, Amber Heard Sport, Amber, and I'm like, oh well, it's not
That makes
50.
sense.
They have
Yeah.
like a Discord channel where they're like, all right, I posted, everybody go. And then they're like, they flock and they all just like hit the like button, and then they distort reality. I mean, this is what they do. But the problem with that is you got to keep it consistent. Because then I
Right.
post another tweet that's exactly the same in context, different in content, and those comments are not there. And I'm like, okay, that's bizarre. And
Mhm.
then you realize, no, it's not. It's because it's an orchestrated, and you can't maintain. This is the beauty of human nature. You can't fake it, even as a collective, unless you truly are going to create a massive targeted campaign to consistently, like every tweet, you guys, we're going at him. And but please, I mean, do it. You know, you're wasting time attacking me. It's saving somebody else from getting attacked. Lightning rod, you know, I'll do it.
Right.
I don't give a shit. You know, to me it means nothing. I can take it. I have thick skin. I've learned to grow it. I didn't when I came into this. I've learned
Neither
to
did
like
I. Yeah.
accept
Mhm.
it. You know, it takes time. It takes time to realize that public scrutiny, it really is, it boils down to this. If I was sitting in a cafe by myself, and this one person would come down and sit down across from me and would be like, Larry, I would like to offer my opinion to you. You're a scummy piece of shit because of all the things that you believe. And I'll be like, oh, yes, please tell me more. But no, I would leave. I would get up and go somewhere else where, you know, and it's the same thing. It's this, only on the internet, people feel like, you know, they're more protected because they can do that kind of thing. So because you can't punch them square in the face, right? That's the bottom
Exactly.
line. So you kind
and
of learn to take things with a grain of salt.
and you know that's one of the things that's so interesting is it's like even like getting into this space, right? Like you do start to see that there are some people that do love, you know, like they love the drama. And you know, there was a period where I was kind of like, okay, this is kind of interesting. You know, people are asking about it. My audience is asking about it. I'll have an opinion. And when I have an opinion, I mean, I don't shy away from my opinions. You know, like when I report a story, if I'm going to sit there and say like, oh no, Mitch McConnell, I think really wants what's best for us. No, he doesn't. He hates us. Like he wants what's best for Mitch McConnell. Like I'm not going to sit there and, you know, bullshit my way through a story and lie to you. So like when people would ask my opinion and I'd say, you know, oh, well, you know, I don't know how I feel about that. Or, oh, that's not a good thing to say. And you start to see though, that like when you do respond to some drama, you're like, uh-oh, because you get sucked in real quick. And that's kind of, I think, the one thing that I've learned in all of this. You know, and again, like I just started in April, not or July, actually. July, I think, was when I started. It was the end of the Depp trials. So probably June. So not even, you know, about 6 months basically. And I've had like a weird and crazy ride, but there's also been so much that I've learned, like, you know, developing a thicker skin. And I already thought I had thick skin, but again, I think it's just the weird where you can see the instant reaction right away, and you're like, whoa. Now it's like you're like, whatever. But then also, you know, just sticking to who you are and sticking to like what you
Being
want
true to
your
yourself.
content to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's
Because
very hard sometimes, but yeah.
yes, because there is, you know, like the grift, there is the drama that can come, you know, from this way or that way. And, you know, there are times where, you know, you can dodge it. There's times where you can just look the other way. Then there's times where it's like, okay, well, when do I stand up and actually say something? And that's been kind of interesting to like maneuver and learn as well. But to me now, it's like I'm in DC. I have a job now, like just like you. Like we this is not our full-time gig. We don't do this for the money. We do this for the messaging.
Oh, welcome to my world of being employed.
Exactly. I know, right? Exactly. Exactly. So that's one of the things. It's like where it's like, I had my fun, and it's like, okay, now back to the real deal,
Yeah. No,
So
I think honestly, I sense that you have a passion for it, and you're just gonna have so much fun with it because it's you. You're doing what you are born to do, and
right.
you're in the best place for it. You are in the fresh network that is basically, I imagine, please don't let me put words in your mouth, but I imagine they're basically, for the most part, are practically going to give you a carte blanche. Like, what do you want to do? Or we're sending you here, but you can do what you want with it type deal. Not like they're not going to put you in a box and be like, this is what you're reporting on and this is what you need to say when you get there.
No, I mean, and that's the thing is it's nice editorial meetings like where they're like, what's going on in DC? And so my report this evening was just about, tomorrow the bill's coming down about the railway strike. It's things that are actually going to affect the audience, not things that are going to emotionally trigger you, like Trump meeting with an anti-Semitic kid. Like, okay, I guess for some voters they might care, but what's going to happen? What are they going to care more about this coming month? If the railways strike, you're not going to get your presents. We're not going to get, chemicals shipped across the country because they don't fly those. They ship them across the railroads. A lot of your Amazon Prime stuff comes across on these railroad trains. That's more important. So that's where it is nice. And you're absolutely right. I do get kind of a carte blanche because they know I'm experienced. They know that I've been in this for a long time. So it's truly, truly exciting.
I believe it. Thank you, Glow T says, I love your channels. I'm so glad I found you guys listening to Johnny Depp. I'm guessing Amber Heard trial. Heart emoji. Thank you, Glow. Thank you, Glow. Yeah, I heard about this, Vicky.
Yes.
There's like a giant avocado blob, and I know I don't know what else to call it. If you've seen the map, it literally legit looks like an avocado. It's like a red pit in the middle. It's got the yellow and then the green. And I'm like, at first I thought it was a meme. I thought it was like somebody made a funny joke about, hey, that looks like an avocado. And then I was like, oh, wait, fuck, that's the weather report. Oh boy. And I was like, which states is it touching? And then I saw the top right of it, like clips
13.
Kentucky. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. So we'll see. I know there's a lot of people. There are a lot of people right now who even were in the chat who said they may not be able to stay. I think Rose was one of them. She's a moderator. And she's like, I may not be able to stay for very long because I have to go like take shelter, take cover. And I'm like, uh-oh. I have a place to be, I think, with a basement. So I should be all right. But I don't know. I'm too much of a fucking millennial. I'm like, bro, I'm like Mother Nature ain't got nothing. Like, bring it, house, whatever. I'll buy another one, as long as I don't die, I'll be okay.
As long as we're in the news, I have to show you my most favorite of all time hurricane coverage video. If you share the screen, this was Shepard Smith on Fox News. And folks.
When was this? October 2000.
This was, oh God.
Yeah, it says death of, oh wait, no. 6 years ago.
6 years ago. I can't remember. Oh yeah. Hurricane Matthew. Okay.
Okay.
Now there's something in the news, like where, yes, we want you to be safe. Like when there's tornadoes are scarier than hurricanes personally, because you never know when they're going to pop up and you don't know where they're going to go. But this was the hurricane coverage of Shepard Smith. And in case people didn't want to like take shelter, this was the newscast to do it.
This moves 20 miles to the west and you and everyone you know are dead. All of you, because you can't survive it. It's not possible unless you're very, very lucky. And your kids die too. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I swear to God. I swear to God.
Was he fired right after that or given a promotion? You please
He
tell
was
me.
given a promotion.
Of course he was. Yeah. You literally just made our ratings skyrocket from 2 people to 2 billion people. Because people are like, what? My kids are what? Excuse me? This was on the news? Talk about like, okay, everybody, don't you're all gonna die, but just don't panic.
Oh,
But
and your
you're all gonna
kids died
die.
too. Oh, and your kids
Oh,
died
and your
too.
kids. Oh, don't forget. And your dogs and your cats and your pets, everybody. Oh
Well,
my
that's one of the
God.
things. I just love, like, 20 miles in, you and everyone you know are dead. You can't survive it. And your kids died too. It was like, you just told me everyone I know. So I thought my kids were included. I mean, folks, like that's one of the things I will say I still love about TV is those channels that they're the clip channels. TV people, we have the TV tube or what would you call it, media tube. There's clip channels for us where they clip our bloopers and stuff. I've luckily never landed on one of those, but oh my God, like
You
some
just
of
jinxed
them,
yourself. You realize that, right? Because you're back on the news. You take it back. Knock on some wood.
there we go.
There you go. There you go. Fixed it. Fixed it. Okay.
But yeah, that's like one of my all-time favorite hurricane weather clips. Just the sheer terror that he tries to deliver. Yeah,
It
and your
fucking worked.
kids died too.
Julio is back. What do you got now, Julie? Have you two seen the Shankila Robinson story? They were able to get the extradition in like 2 weeks for one of the people involved. She's facing homicide charges in Mexico, and it's getting 0 coverage.
I have been following that case. I will say Fox and CNN, they have covered it in the beginning, and they actually had Shankila's mom on. Here's the sad part with a lot of these stories is a lot of times the news, they won't, like, if there's no new updates to the story, like they're not going to follow it. So it's like, oh, or you're not going to see it in the news cycle until like an arrest is made or until, whatever. I will say though, this Idaho murder story is totally different because they have no leads, no suspect, no nothing. And, all of these networks have been on it consistently. A lot of it too is because, I'm just going to say it, they were white kids up in the hills of Idaho. Whereas a lot of times, and that's another thing you do see in the mainstream media, there is preferential treatment. For example, like I'll just say it too, like Gabby Petito. Do you know how many indigenous women in Utah, 700, I believe, in the last 3 years have gone missing? Not one lick of coverage, but then Gabby Petito goes missing and boom. Not saying that, it shouldn't be covered, but it's like everyone should be covered. And that's the other thing too, is a lot of times with those 24-hour news cycles, if the story ain't sexy enough, they might pass it, whereas just, it should be, it should just be covered no matter what, but as far as this one, I don't know if you saw the video of them beating her, but, they said that she had, alcohol poisoning. I don't know if you know this story where she went to Mexico.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, she went to Mexico and with a group of people, and she doesn't come back. She dies there, and the kids tell her parents that she died of alcohol poisoning. Meanwhile, the autopsy shows that she had multiple breaks in her spine. Oh. And then this video surfaces of this girl just beating the living shit out of her. And it's a guy taping the video or taking the video. And he's like, man, you're not even going to fight back. So he is now implicated. This is going to be a future trial that's going to be up and coming. But yeah, it's now the 2 people, Mexico wants to extradite them for a trial, which folks, you want to do a trial in the United States over Mexico. Okay.
100%.
Just
Everything is bought and paid for in Mexico.
yeah.
Everything is, you think it's corrupt here? Think about it. And it's not just tourists. I was one of them, as a tourist. It was my buddy and I, just to make a really long story short, we heard it from other people who were literally like on the plane with us, and we experienced it ourselves. Money can buy you freedom, and it not just a few $100. They'll arrest you for like some serious crimes, not us, but like some other people. We didn't even get arrested. I didn't do anything. It was my buddy who just did something completely stupid. It wasn't barely even a crime. He was trying to pee in the bush because he had to go to the restroom. And he never did it. He never did it. And the cops show up and they're like, and they're speaking so fast, and we're just like, dude, no tengo dinero. And he's like, you need to get in the car. And we're like, we don't have any money. And like, you need to get in the car. And we're like, no, our bus is coming. We said, fuck you, and got on the bus. And they left us alone because they realized we have no money. They didn't arrest us because we had no money. That's a real story. And then we heard about like this one dude that I don't know what they did. I don't remember. This was like 10 years ago. But I remember he said he had like his hands on the wall because they're like, put your hands up or whatever. And he had like a bunch of hundreds rolled up. He was trying to hide it from the cop, and the cop like found it and like unraveled his hand and just took the money and like, all right, you guys are free to go. Like you don't want to have a trial in Mexico.
No, you definitely don't. And that's the thing, is if they're going to get extradited to Mexico too, being in those Mexican prisons. Yeah. Now there are some though that say, like, for example, a friend of mine is El Chapo's lawyer. When I was a news anchor down in El Paso, she said that he would have rather wanted to be in a Mexican prison versus a prison in New York, which makes perfect sense because he would have walked out of a Mexican prison.
That's why.
But yeah, for them, it's not going to be good at all.
So are they in Mexico prison right now?
No, I think they just got the extradition. Yeah.
They got the extradition.
Yeah.
Mary Malarkey says, as a Chicago native and watching Faran's coverage during the Johnny Depp trial, I will definitely support her on her new journey. I'm a Northwest Sider. And you?
I am a West Sider, but my mother was a North Sider. My father was a South Sider. So I met in the middle, and I'm a West Sider. Grew up in the western suburbs.
That's sweet. That's awesome. Get your homies in my chat.
Sweet. Yeah, all these Chicago homies. And so yeah, this is crazy. Like now they're like, when you just Shankila Robinson, when you just Google her, like now they're saying Shankila Robinson's death has Black Twitter talking about toxic friendships. Like it's just all this. It's a very under the radar story, but also it's in the headlines, if that makes sense. But still behind the Idaho coverage. But yeah, crazy stuff.
So crazy. And it's so hard to keep up. Like there's, like you messaged me about, I was like, oh, I was in my own little world of reading the Amber brief yesterday. And you're like, Kanye just walked off set of this one dude. And I'm just like, what? Like that seems like big news. Yeah. On Tim Pool. Tim Pool, yeah. I'm telling you, has he skyrocketed yet? Was I right or was I wrong? Because I don't think he did anything wrong. Kanye walked off when they didn't give him the platform to talk shit about the shit he wanted to talk about, which was kind of gross in my opinion. But
no, he said he didn't want to talk about Jewish people. He didn't want to go there.
He said, who's they? Remember? Because he was like, who's they? And they're like, well, we don't want to talk about who they is, do we? That was Tim and them, and then Kanye walked off. Unless I missed it, I don't know. But they started. What they should have done is they should have shifted topics and talked about like as much as they could to just keep the show rolling. Instead, they tried to like milk that drama. There it is. In front of like 100,000 concurrent viewers. And I don't know, in my opinion, it was unnecessary. They could have done something different and just maybe lost 20,000 of them, but at least had an interesting show. Instead, it became kind of like a coping show, but it still worked. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say with such a large audience.
Let me see.
While you're looking that up, I'm going to read another super chat by Julie. The lead attorney had a Mexican journalist on who broke the story. Funny was they thought it was a man because she was wearing a wig. Mm-hmm. The lead attorney or the journalist? I don't know. But thank you, Julie. Thank you for sharing that.
All I'm seeing is that like they show that Kanye went to Frederick, Maryland after. I'm not really seeing. Yeah, see, Viva Fry agrees with us too. He goes, if Kanye West thinks they were exploiting him, just wait until he realizes about the two he's hanging with. Kanye is indeed being exploited from every angle, and most importantly, by present company. Timcast, you did good. He was looking to make a scene, and as was his entourage. Yeah,
that's what I think. Yeah. I don't know. They were also saying something interesting. So I watched it for a little bit when you sent me the link. They're like, well, we talked to Kanye, like offset, and people were like saying that he's bipolar and he's this and that. He's totally fine. Like he's a completely normal dude, you know. And I feel the problem with trying to like diagnose someone like 10 minutes before a set, probably not the best thing to do. But even people who have lost their minds, they don't lose their mind in an instant. And like everything is like, the sky is purple and there are like pink dinosaurs that look like octopuses walking around. And also the Jews did 9/11, you know. It's not like that. You don't have like a universal crazy. It's the mentality that shifts. And you walk and talk like a completely normal human being, but your ideology is kind of skewed to a direction, and most people may go, you know what? I don't know if I agree with that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's where the danger is trying to. I forget. We actually learned this in the Johnny Depp trial when you try to read someone else's notes and diagnose them. I forget the technical term for it, but it's basically like diagnosing from the armchair.
Basically schmiegling it.
Schmiegling it, yeah. Schmiegling it. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And I remember Dennison was like, the fuck? But so, the Goldwater rule. The Goldwater rule. Thank you, Miss Scotty Lamar.
Yes.
And that's the one thing that I will say in the whole Kanye thing that's interesting is that, you know, we saw in the Johnny Depp trial, you know, there were so many, I mean, he literally was paying for like 15, 25, 30 people's, you know, livelihoods. Okay. And you see like where people glob onto you like a leech and they will just suck you dry. And Kanye talked about it a little bit last night where he's like, you know, I had all these people, you know, that were managing my money and yada, yada, yada. I understand where he's coming from in the sense of Hollywood, and it's a sick game out there, and there's, you know, people are out there, they don't care about you as far as a person, they care about themselves and getting ahead. Totally 100% see that. And unfortunately he was married to like the family that is like known for doing that. But the part that I think that no one is talking about that I think is kind of like, wait, what? Was when he said that he owes $50 million in taxes, or he owes like 50 million, and nobody's talking about that. And that he might be subject to a criminal tax case. Okay. Want to elaborate? And that's where I think that's where he was getting into, oh, you know, they did this to me. And that's where I think Tim was like, you know, and then here's the other thing is I've had people end interviews too. Here's the problem. And this is where, you know, when you see people like Kanye or other people like this, I've interviewed thousands of them where they want to be able to control the interview. And it's like, no, this isn't a platform for you. I'm the captain. I'm the captain.
I am the captain now. You see me? I'm the captain now.
Yeah. And it's like, you can't just like say whatever you want and then say, I don't want to talk about that. It's like, no, this is my platform, or in the case of Tim Pool's, this is my show. And I thought he was extremely respectful in all of it. And
That's
I
what
thought he made
too.
the great point too, where he's like, wait a minute, you can't just say they and not, reference to who they is, which is, at the end of the day, I mean, Tim Pool does have has a journalistic background. I mean, he started as a journalist with Vice and, covering from his start with Occupy Wall Street. I followed him for a long time. So he knows you can't just throw they out there and not attribute it to who is they, so I thought he handled it great, but yeah. So it is one of these things where, I think for him, he's going to go up in the ratings. And I agree with you. I think so too.
It's all about just cordiality. It's all at the end of the day. And this is what I try to do. I know I'm still relatively new at this, and it's hard for me to have someone on when I don't have chemistry with them. Like you and I, we bounce off each other. Like we feel the ebb and flow. I have guests on sometimes, and I've been a guest on their show where they're just like, you start talking, and then they start talking over you, and you're just like, okay, well, I'll let you talk, and then you start talking, and then they all like, I'm like, okay, you relax. I'm just, dude. Am I like, are you gonna let me speak, or and then I just, for the most part, I just kind of sit there silently, and that's one of the reasons why I dislike panels. Because I'm always like, I'm waiting for my moment to butt in. I'm not good at okay, it's my turn to speak now. I'm just chilling. I'm just like vibing with everybody and like, all right, cool. And then I'll wait and eventually there'll come the moment like, Larry, are you still awake? And I'll be like, yeah, no, I'm here. You want my input? I'll be glad to give it,
Yeah.
But I'm just not,
sorry.
I'm just not, I'm a go-getter in life, but I don't have this passion of, I must speak my mind and everybody needs to shut up and listen, because I don't care enough about it. It's just me. You know what I mean? So maybe that's why I don't. People have asked me before, like, why don't you partake in panels? Like, have you been like ousted from LawTube and this and that? It's like, I was like, no, it's voluntary. I choose not to. I choose not to go on these panels because it's not my forte. It's not what I was born to do. I am better at doing other things than fighting for my turn to speak, which can be a disaster.
I've been on panels, and then I have held panels, and after my most recent panel that I had, and everybody, if you know, I was like, you know what? I get why like Emily D. Baker, DUI guy, Rob Gouveia, why a lot of them just kind of fly solo. Because a lot of times, on panels, not only are you going to be sitting there waiting for your turn to speak, sometimes you can have somebody, that might say something controversial, or sometimes somebody might start going at it with somebody on your panel, and it's like, whoa, hang on a second. And then that immediately becomes the focus of, the topic at hand, when it's like, well, no, that wasn't the whole topic. Like, we wanted it to be about this. And that's where I've even seen, like, when I've had panels on my show, on my previous show, you keep them small, you keep them simple, because the more and more people you start getting, the more and more it's like, oh gosh, like this could go down. This could go to hell in a handbasket real quick.
Yeah.
It really could. Because there are people, and trust me, I've had to learn it too. Like, there were times when I first, again, like, we all are constantly learning in this YouTube space. But like, I remember when I first got on, it was like, oh, like, I've been in the media for this long and I've done this and this and this and this. And I felt like I kind of always had to give my resume because people didn't know who I was. And they were like, why do you always have to give your resume? And you're like, well, I guess you don't know who I am, and I want to seem credible. But then people were like, no, we'll just look you up if we, you already seem credible. We'll just look you up. And I was like, oh, okay. then, there were times where, Joe was like, talk less, smile more. And I was like, okay, like, because there were times where I would just, I get it. I can talk to a fork,
It's amazing that you can admit it. Honestly, I'm sorry. Like, that's beautiful. To me, that is beautiful.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is that like people, that is the one common thing that people think that I don't like, I can't take constructive criticism. And it's like, do you understand that I have been in like the performance industry, whether it be theater, Broadway, television, since I was 8 years old? It started as a child model. Okay. I've been told you're too fat, you're too skinny. We don't like your hair. We love your hair. We hate your nose. We love your eyes. I have been told everything from this way to Sunday. And if somebody's going to tell me, hey, you need to talk a little bit less, it's like, okay, it's not a personal take. It's just a criticism. I can take it and say, okay, or I could say, take what I want, leave the rest, And that's one of the things that's in this space that has been able to help me grow, is being able to take that constructive criticism from good friends. But there's a difference between constructive criticism and then like a personal attack,
Right.
That's the difference. But for the most part, all I've received is great constructive criticism, and it's helped me grow. It's helped me become a better YouTuber and even news anchor too,
Yep. Yeah. Marine. I don't know. Conspiracy. That's what I think, but marine would be like with an E at the end, unless it's Aquamarine, which maybe their name is Marin. I don't know. Anyway, but I see what they're trying to do with the name. It's kind of cool. Conspiracy theories are like a drug. If people are on it, they need more and wilder ones, especially when they surround themselves with other conspiracy theory junkies.
Yes. And we saw that a lot during the 2020 campaign, especially during COVID, the algorithms. That's the other thing is algorithms, social media didn't help in a lot of that either. And I see Julio, she's like, wait, was Faran actually Honey Boo Boo as a child? No, I was not. Although because I've been having toddlers and tiaras play in the background as I'm like unpacking all my boxes and stuff. And all of a sudden I heard, I'm Alana, I'm 6, and I'm a beauty queen. And I was like, Honey Boo Boo, I forgot about her. But no, if you want to know, I was in the kids chorus for Joseph with Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with Donny Osmond in Chicago when I was from 4th and 5th grade. So I would go to school till noon, have to hop on a bus, take it downtown, and then I'd be there till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, or no, 10 o'clock at night. And then we'd have tutors and stuff. And that was one of the things as a young kid where I realized, I don't know if I want to go to Hollywood, because I missed my family Thanksgiving. I missed a lot of stuff as a kid, which now I get child actors because you miss a lot. And yeah.
I was Alan Cummings when I was a child in my 40s.
Are you Benjamin Buttoning it?
People have been telling me that I look like Alan Cummings more and more, and I don't know. I guess I kind of do. Maybe have you seen The Good Wife?
Oh my God, yeah, you kind of do.
I don't know. I used to get that a lot, and then it went dead for the longest time, and then for some reason, the Amber Turds decided to like unearth it, thinking it's an insult. But I'm like, oh, please tell me more. Because I mean, he's a really good actor. Like, I really liked him in The Good Wife.
Yeah, he is.
I don't know if he obviously did other projects. I'm just not familiar with his work as much as I would like to, because I just don't follow him. I haven't seen a lot of stuff that he was in, but I remember he had like a very big pivotal role. But I also think it's because in real life he's gay. So I think that they think that that's also kind of like I don't know. The more, especially when I do something big, like read Amber's brief and shit all over it, because that's exactly what it is and what it deserves. they come out with like the most heinous stuff. Like in the last 2 days, my intelligence has been insulted. My ability to read, my ability to scroll, my ability to analyze law, read critically. My law school has been insulted. My state has been insulted. My eyes have been insulted. I mean, like, and that's when you know you're like, man, I'm doing some really good work out there. Because if
Exactly.
they're coming after you with everything they've got, like they're firing cannons, and I'm just looking at them going, tell me more, you know?
That's a pretty one. I like that one. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's when you know you're doing something right. And that's where folks, a lot of times it's like, you'll see those, like, I can't believe you wore that top, and oh my God, your hair looks like shit. You're just like, okay, you're not insulting my show and its content. Keep going. Mm-hmm.
And it's also known as the ad hominem attack, when you attack the person because you have nothing to attack of their content. Either you don't know what it is, you don't care to find out what it is, or you just know what it is and you don't have a counter to it, or don't care to have a counter to it. You attack the person. It's the most overused fallacy. The second one probably being the straw man argument. Well, did you just say this by saying that, and now I'm going to attack what I pretend that you said was what you didn't say? That's Twitter.
Exactly.
That's like 50%. Did I say 50? Like 90% of Twitter is what that is.
Twitter is just, it's like the garbage pail of just people, where they're, I mean, I remember I put out a tweet, for example, perfect example. I put out a tweet where it was this one worker at Twitter who hadn't been fired, who said that, now she's struggling because she's working 75 plus hours a week because so many people have been fired. And I tweeted, I was like, wow, like the average, American, that's working, 80 plus hours a week is going to be shocked when they see this, with like an eye roll. And everyone was like, average Americans don't work 80 plus hours. And I was like, well, a lot of it's not calculated though that way. A lot of it, are, gig workers, a lot of times they're working 85 plus hours a week in order to just maintain a salary. I mean, and then as I started showing more and more like facts to kind of back it up, people are like, well, why aren't you attacking the CEOs for making it like this? I'm like, I just did a tweet, and can you just appreciate it? Like, I just did a tweet. Like, I mean, they're why didn't you do it this way?
Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. Like Kyle, he's got an opinion. I'm just kidding, Kyle. You came at the wrong time. Kyle Cowden says, I used to get Tom Selleck. Now all I get is just the dad from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
I'd also say Legal Vices. You got a little Legal Vices vibe going on.
Got a little Legal Vices vibe going on. Yeah, very shiny. Anyway, listen, Faran, I feel honestly like we could probably go on for another 8 hours. So we have to do this again, first of all. Second of all, thank you for coming on.
Of course.
There we go. Aquamarine is without the E, is in German. See, we were both right. See? Aquamarine. Jawohl. Jawohl. So thank you very much, Faran, for coming on the show today and for joining me. This has been absolutely so much fun, and we will definitely do it again, and good luck in DC.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, you can follow me at Fair and Balanced on YouTube, on my locals as well, fairandbalanced.locals.com. But also, and then anytime you need anything as far as an inside look of what's going on in DC, like I said, tomorrow it's going to be this railway bill. We also have the debt ceiling that they got to pass a bill on. They have to pass the ominous spending bill for 2023. Mind you, they have to do this in 5 weeks during the lame duck session. And right now, everybody's just pointing fingers at each other saying, no, you're bad, or you're wrong, or no, we don't like you, or man, I hate your shirt, or something, like whatever, whatever stupid arguments they can think of. So yeah, so whenever you need something DC related or what's going on, I'm always available. So
100%. Thank you so much, Faran. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks.
That was a lot of fun. Faran and I haven't streamed like this, I think since the trial. I honestly can't remember if we had a show like this since the trial, but I'm glad we did this. Don't forget, tomorrow we're going to finish up Amber's TRO. And then Thursday, I'm planning on having a surprise guest on the show. And on Friday, what do I have Friday? I think I have something planned for Friday. If I don't, I will. So stay tuned as the daily DUI guy continues. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.